October 1945. The Palace of Justice in Nuremberg, Germany. Here, for the first time in history, an international tribunal convened to prosecute crimes of war. The Allies brought 24 high-ranking leaders of the Third Reich to this room. The goal was to establish legal accountability for the systematic murder of millions. But outside these courtroom doors lay a devastated country and an enormous psychological barrier. The German public, standing amidst the rubble of their cities, largely refused to acknowledge what had happened. When confronted with the atrocities committed by their government, citizens repeatedly deployed a common defense mechanism. They claimed total ignorance of the massacres, insisting that even if they had known, they were powerless to intervene. This widespread denial presented a severe problem. You cannot reconstruct a nation, nor can you permanently eradicate a toxic ideology if the population refuses to admit that the ideology caused harm in the first place. To break through this collective delusion, the prosecution had to show that the Holocaust was not a chaotic byproduct of combat. They had to trace the violence back to a highly organized, meticulously engineered ideological machine. Nuremberg served a dual purpose. It prosecuted the individuals in the dock, but it also publicly laid bare the entire state apparatus designed to manufacture the complicity of the German people. To understand how that complicity was built, we have to look back to the years before the party seized total control, when the ideological blueprint was first being drafted. The party leadership took fringe 19th century concepts and weaponized them. Chief among these was the pseudoscientific myth of an Aryan Master race, which asserted that people of Germanic descent were biologically superior to everyone else. They used this racial myth to sort humanity into a strict biological hierarchy. At the top were the Aryans, and at the bottom were Jewish people, Romani populations, and Slavs, all classified as subhuman and framed as active threats to the nation. This racial theory was then paired with a specific geopolitical ambition known as Lebensraum, or living space. This map highlights the core goal of Lebensraum. To secure agricultural resources, Germany had to expand eastward to the Urals. Overlaying demographic targets reveals the lethal logic. Millions already living there had to be systematically displaced, enslaved, or exterminated. The state did not present this agenda to the public as a political debate. It was handed down through a single charismatic leader as an inescapable Darwinian law of nature. The blueprint replaced traditional ethics with a mandate for survival. It reframed extreme violence against targeted groups, not as a crime, but as a biological necessity for the preservation of the German race. Abstract theories alone do not mobilize a nation. The state had to implement this worldview physically, and they began with the most malleable demographic available: children. Through a rapid process of synchronization known as Gleichschaltung, the regime purged the public school system of democratic teachers. They then mandated new textbooks designed specifically to spread anti-Semitic propaganda and absolute obedience to the state. But the classroom was only the first step. The state rapidly expanded mandatory youth organizations to capture children's attention outside of school hours, effectively monopolizing their entire waking lives. For young boys, Hitler Youth used outdoor activities and sports to instill strict militarism and blind obedience. In parallel, the League of German Girls prepared young women for state-mandated motherhood. Both organizations demanded that members abandon their individuality in favor of serving the collective whole. Even the most innocent aspects of childhood were corrupted. Board games and toys were meticulously redesigned to serve as tools of racial indoctrination and messaging. The objective of this intense pipeline was incredibly practical. By the time they reached 18, stripped of any prior class consciousness, they were primed to enlist directly into the armed forces, or SS. By systematically erasing individuality from childhood, the regime ensured its citizens would follow orders. Public complicity wasn't an accident, it was a deeply ingrained structural feature of the state. Back in the Palace of Justice in 1946, the tribunal delivered its verdicts. The architects of the regime received sentences ranging from lengthy prison terms to execution by hanging. Those immediate legal consequences were historic. Yet the Allies had a secondary, long-term strategic goal that would prove equally important: creating a massive, irrefutable public record of the crimes. Under the mandate of the London Agreement, The occupying powers were required to broadcast the evidence gathered at the trial to every corner of Germany. The Allies launched an aggressive education campaign. They erected billboards and mandated the screening of films featuring undeniable physical proof of the concentration camps, forcing the population to look directly at what their government had done. This flood of documentation pierced the veil of mass delusion. When confronted with thousands of photographs and eyewitness accounts, maintaining the defense that they knew nothing became practically impossible. The process of denazification was far from perfect. As the Cold War set in, geopolitical priorities shifted, and many former party members quietly reintegrated into civil society and the government. Yet the legacy of Nuremberg endures. It established the ultimate legal precedent that state-sponsored atrocities can be objectively proven in a court of law, ensuring that the ideological machinery used to build them will inevitably be dragged into the light of international justice.